I think that the MAHA movement is really onto something in terms of our food supply. If you really pay attention when you go to the grocery store, it's disgusting. I mean, even the organic produce is suspect.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leila Show. We are here with the amazing Sherri Tenpenny, who, if most of you remember during COVID, she was very much an activist and somebody who spoke vocally about the dangers of the COVID shot. She really went all out to make sure that people had the information that they needed to make the right decision, which of course in my mind was to just not get that stupid thing. And you really would have like data and data and data. I mean, it was just so intriguing how much knowledge you had. So Dr. Tenpenny, I would love for you to take us back. Take us back to, I know when you graduated from medical school, there were only 3 shots then. Take us back to the moment you were red-pilled, where your mind was blown and you realized that you truly didn't learn enough about vaccines in medical school and that you were determined to help the cause and inform the public about the true dangers of childhood vaccines. Will you take us back?
Well, sure. Leila, thank you for inviting me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
My whole journey really started in September of 2000 when over the summer I got a trifold, simple little trifold brochure in the mail from the National Vaccine Information Center meeting. I'll never forget it. It was in a light gray print paper with black ink, and it was just a simple trifold 8.5 by 11 piece of paper talking about this conference that they're going to have. And by that time, I had been in emergency medicine. I'd been the director of a level 2 trauma center for 12 years, actually longer than that. And then I had had my clinic open in Cleveland, Ohio, doing integrated medicine since 1996. And then just serendipitously, I know it was just God sending them there. In the last couple of months before I got this flyer in the mail, I'd had several mothers in my office who came in with their little children, like babies, like under the age of 2. And they would be clutching them in their arms and sort of saying, "What are your thoughts about vaccines?" And they were just had this terror look in their eye. And I thought, well, I really haven't given vaccines much of a thought. I grew up in a chiropractic family. I was not vaccinated when I was a kid. I had measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, pertussis. I had all of those things, and I never thought much about it. And in medical school, there was only 3 vaccines, and I don't really remember talking about them much. And it was in 1986 when the National Vaccine Childhood Injury Compensation Act was passed. That was in 1986, and then 91 is when the vaccine schedule started to ramp up precipitously. And I got this flyer in the mail in 2000, and I tried to not go. I tried to throw that flyer away multiple times, and somehow it kept ending up back on my kitchen counter. I even went so far as to call them and say, "When is your next meeting?" Going to Washington, D.C. in September wasn't a really great time for me to be leaving and going to a conference. And they said, "Well, we're just a really small nonprofit. We may not have another conference." And I thought, well, shoot, I better go. There must be somebody there important that I need to meet.
Wow.
Well, when I got there, it was a 3.5-day meeting with that. I heard doctors and lawyers and bench researchers and investigators and parents of vaccine injured children and parents of unvaccinated children talk for 3.5 days nonstop. And I was just mesmerized by this material. And when I came home, I thought, how in the world did I miss this? How did I not know anything, that there was a conflict, that there was a problem with vaccines? How did I not know this? I better look into this.
Wow.
And so I thought, well, where do I start? I guess I'll start with the CDC. They're the ones who are supposed to be experts on vaccines. So I went out and I printed out the general recommendations of vaccination, the 1998 version of it. They put those out now about every 2 or 3 years. And I read this 42-page paper and I thought, this can't be it. Was poorly written, very immature-ish. Every reference was the CDC. It would be like me writing an article and every footnoted reference was written by Dr. Tenpenny. So I kept quoting and quoting myself. It's like a circuitous circle. And I thought, there's got to be something more to this. This is just awful. And I spent the first 3 years really trying to figure out why we vaccinate these kids for all these infections that they're never going to get exposed to as babies. And I spent 3 years really angry and spending a lot of time trying to figure out why did we inject kids with chickenpox vaccines and hepatitis A vaccines and all these other things. And then each year it just got worse. And so they keep adding and adding and adding and adding to where now children get 20 jabs by the time they're 6 months of age. They get almost 30 by the time they're 1 year of age. And they get almost 40 by the time they start kindergarten. And they get all of those doses of vaccines. And I decided, a few months ago, that I really wasn't going to talk about the pediatric schedule anymore. I was going to call it what it is. It's a pediatric poisoning program that on schedule, on time, from pregnancy to 3 vaccines that they get after they're born to 7 vaccines each of 2, 4, 6 months. They get another 9 shots at 1 year of age. And it goes on and on and on. And that is a regimented, systematic planning of poisoning children on time and making parents feel guilty if they don't do it. Yeah. So from now on, I'm only going to call it what it is, the pediatric poisoning schedule.
I like that. I like that name. That's exactly what it is. I want to pause you for a second because, I've spoken to many traditional doctors and I've tried to explain to them about how bad vaccines are. And I've even gifted books to them, and I just get this immediate reaction of like, it's basically stay away from me. I don't want to hear it. How can you tell me that the APA has been lying to me? How can you tell me that the AMA, they're just so defensive immediately. How were you so open? I wish all doctors were like that. I wish. And what is it that has happened to most doctors where they didn't do what you did? You used your critical thinking, analytical brain, and you dove in and you did 3 years of research. Now, can you imagine what our world would be like as if every doctor did what you did? So what's the difference in your mind? What shaped your mind to be able to jump in like that?
I was just mesmerized by what I had heard at that conference. Like, how could I have missed this in my education? And the more that I read, it became almost like an obsession. Like the more that I read, I kept thinking sooner or later I would find the paper or the set of papers that would tell me why we are doing this, why we were trying to protect kids from so many infections all at the same time when they're less than 6 months of age. Why are we injecting this? And I kept digging and digging, thinking sooner or later, there's going to be a paper that's going to pop up and go, here it is. This is the reason why. And to this day, 25 years into doing this investigation and spending more than 50,000 hours of my time, and that's not an exaggerated number. If anything, it's probably an underestimation, because this whole topic has just consumed me because God kind of told me to do it. Mm-hmm. At one point in time, I said, Lord, why did you give me this to do? I was sitting upstairs in my upstairs office and I was crying. I said, why didn't you give me Tony Robbins' Go Team Rah Rah? Why did you give me that? Nobody wants to hear this. Nobody believes it. Parents are just indoctrinated. Doctors are just goose stepping to the pharmaceutical industry. Why did you give me this to do? And out loud at 2:00 in the morning, there was no one else in the house but me. I heard his voice say to me, because you're willing to do the work.
Wow.
And that was in 2002.
I got goosebumps. Chills when you said that.
And I've never stopped. And I just feel like, once you know what you know, you can't unknow it. You can't go backwards in time. And the more that I read and the more that I investigated, just starting with reading the junk that's on the package inserts. And then I subscribed to the Pediatric Infectious Disease Journal and JAMA and the New England Journal and at the time when I was first doing this, there was a lot more access to, they had big companies that you could pay like a fee to, and they would give you full access to any article that you wanted to see. Those companies have probably been bought up by Elsevier and all of those different, like the big companies that they make multiple $1 billion a year off of these articles. So there was a lot of access. And I would go to the office and I would see patients from 9 to 6, and I'd come home and I'd fix a quick dinner. Then I'd take the plate and I'd go upstairs to my upstairs office, and I would sit there from 6:30, 7 o'clock until 2:00 in the morning every single night. And on weekends, I spent from, the time I got up till the time I got to bed on Saturday and Sunday. And there were times when I would take entire weeks off, like 2 and 3 weeks off at a time. And I found a cool little place in Encinitas, California. It was a cool little hotel. It was called the Moonlight Beach Motel, a little kind of inexpensive little hotel sat up on a hill. At the time, it was $85 a night.
Wow.
And I would go out and I would stay there for 2 weeks at a time. And I would go to the grocery store and I would get my food and I'd get a couple of bottles of wine. And the only time I would leave that hotel room was at low tide. Every day I'd go out at low tide, and because you could walk down the hill and be right on the beach. And every day at low tide, I'd go out and go for a walk on the beach. Other than that, I was sitting there consuming everything I could consume about all the different vaccines. And I just knew that sooner or later, if people just heard this, they would go, oh my gosh, this is horrible. I'm not going to do this. Well, 25 years later, it's still like pushing a huge stone up a hill because doctors are indoctrinated and they refuse to. It's difficult for them to believe anything that would impact their paycheck. Yeah. Because if they understood what the problems were with vaccination, when they understood and embraced vaccine injury, all of it, asthma, allergies, eczema, ADD, ADHD, insulin-dependent diabetes, a long list of neurological problems, a long list of cancers, and yes, at the very, very end of the severe injury is autism. If they understood what they were doing and causing, they would have to stop. Mm-hmm. And that would stop their paycheck. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't have their lifestyle and their ego and their arrogance to hide behind. And so therefore, if they just put their fingers in their ears and go, no, 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 and pretend it doesn't exist, therefore in their world it doesn't. And they're a bunch of liars. They're a bunch of liars. Yeah. And I really have no tolerance for it. I really don't.
It's tragic, but I think the fact that you were open enough to even take that card and go, you know what, I'm going to go there is a big step. And unfortunately, doctors, like you said, they've got their finger in their ear and they just don't want to do it. I mean, I'll never forget talking to a lady who was a neurosurgeon, and both of her kids were at our school. And they had one of them had all sorts of ADHD and just a lot of issues. And I'm like, have you thought about looking into the vaccine schedule? And she just was like, I don't want to hear it. I trust the APA. I trust my doctors. I've studied the impacts of aluminum, in these shots, and there's so little that it's not going to cause any damage. Like, she just didn't want to hear that she as a mom could be harming her child, and as a doctor, no less, could also be harming her child. I mean, it's heartbreaking.
It's all about ego. I couldn't possibly do anything because I trust my doctor. And so it's that the religion, they're bending the knee at the altar of vaccinology and believing in the religion of mainstream medicine. Because it's all a belief system. People say, I believe in vaccines.
Yeah,
really?
Believe.
Exactly. So since when has it become an invisible spirit that you trust and believe in instead of looking at the hard science of what you are injecting into your children?
And you said it also, just open the vaccine insert. Just look at, on many of them, it has a side effect of SIDS. It clearly shows formaldehyde, polysorbate 80, it clearly shows a lot of toxins. Yet we have these crunchy granola moms who only feed their kids organic, whole foods, and yet they're taking them to the doctor like sacrificing like sacrificial lambs, saying, here, do whatever you want to my baby, but when I go to the grocery store, I'm only going to feed them the purest of organic food.
Yeah, they read every label on every food product. And if it's got any sort of chemical in it, they won't eat it, or a shampoo or a lotion or anything like that. But they will inject their child with chicken parts and cow blood and and more than 100 different chemicals and aluminum and mercury, repeated doses of egg products, little particles of eggs. And literally, if the child is fully vaccinated and gets every dose of every vaccine on the schedule, they will get somewhere around 75 shots. And that varies a little bit. We can't say an absolute number because it varies a little bit, because some manufacturers require 2 shots in a series and some require 3. And so the number varies a little bit. And it also varies on whether or not they get RSV at birth, whether they get get the hepatitis B at birth, and some of it varies. But roughly, when they've now added the COVID vaccines and the RSV vaccines to the pediatric schedule, they get somewhere around 75 to 78 doses of foreign matter, foreign proteins, foreign chemicals, adjuvants, and if you add up all of the chemicals, if you make a list, there's more than 100. So they get 100 doses of chemicals. And if you can in any way prove to me that somehow that makes babies healthier, then I'll stop what I'm saying and eat my words. And that's why I knew with RF Kennedy during his hearings, when he said, if the science shows me wrong, I'm willing to say I'm wrong, because the science will never show that he's wrong.
He knows
the
that
science
too.
is absolutely going to show that he's absolutely right.
Yeah, he knows that. I love when he made that statement, because people don't realize. They're like, see, he's open. And I'm like, yeah, idiot. He knows exactly what he's saying. He's been studying this for over 20 years. He knows that there's unquestionably no doubt that they are not safe and they're not effective. We go way back to the during COVID days. And I actually remember, I don't know if you remember visiting me in Ohio. Do you remember that trip?
I do, absolutely. Of course I do.
I had been diagnosed with Lyme disease, and I had learned that, I got to get all these toxins out of my body, right? And the number one toxin I had in my body was breast implants. And, my BPA scores were like off the charts. At the time they were like well over 40. I mean, still to this day, they're over 12, which is still like significantly higher than the minimum that you should have, which I think is like 0.5, right? So I've been still over the last 4 years to get the BPA out of my body, and they were from the implants. I mean, the doctor gave me the implants, and to this day I have them. You smell them, it smells like fresh plastic. And they're over 15 years old. So, the reason I'm bringing this up is I remember you came over, and, I was obviously fresh out of surgery. I think maybe it was the next day or the day after. And I was just telling you that I had this crazy experience where, while I was under, I kept telling the doctor, I need to save the children. I need to save the children. And I'm crying hysterically. I didn't remember any of that part, but I do remember waking up telling her, I need to save the children. I need to save the children. And she's like, listen, you weren't here. Like, that was like, you were talking to God. I suggest you go home and you record on your phone exactly like what downloads you were getting. And I'll never forget just bawling like a baby, thinking and hearing, basically I was talking to God and hearing him say, like, these vaccines are killing my kids. These are my kids. They are trying to stop their connection to me. They are trying to stop them from hearing me. You need to help save my children. And I feel the same as you, that God chose me. He chose people like us because he knows that we would fight. And of course, we knew each other when I stood up against the vaccines at my school and they tried to cancel me. You were one of the doctors that I called to go, like, what is going on? What do I need to do? And how do I protect the kids? And you gave me great advice. And you were like, listen, there is a thing called shedding, and it is in the vaccine inserts. And if your teachers go and get those shots and give them to those kids, you could be impacting those kids right there under your roof. And I knew the world would think I was crazy, but it wasn't a choice to me to not say something. Because you and Dr. Pilevsky and, there were a few other doctors that I was talking to, Dr. Northrup, you guys have been researching this stuff for over 20 years. So it wasn't like I was just listening to just anybody. Not to mention, I called the chief pediatric doctor in a hospital nearby, and he told me kids were not dying from this, right? So it's like if more people stood up to the forces and knew that God has our back, even though sometimes we have to go through we have to rough and tumble, and get slapped around, it's okay. We can handle it. And who cares if we get slapped a few times? We'll stand back up and we'll continue to fight the good fight. And whether path we have to take, whether I had voided, over $1 million in parent contracts because they were so mad at me, like, fine, go where you need to go. I don't need your money. I'm here to protect these kids. God told me so. And I'm willing to fight the good fight. And that's what I admire about you, is that you are way early. Like you are, one of the OGs with Dr. Wakefield, Dr. North. I mean, you guys are like the OGs. And so I feel blessed and privileged to know you guys. Because, if I didn't know you guys, like, I don't know what I would have done. But I've got this wealth of knowledge that I was so blessed to have. I was like, no, now that I have this knowledge, I need to do something. Even if that meant literally going from, 280 kids down to 70 and having to rebuild from scratch, which I was okay with, So you've got a nonprofit. You still have your nonprofit?
Yeah, but it's not real active. It's not really not really an active entity right now.
Okay. So tell us about your new book. Tell us what you've been focusing on these days. I would love to hear all about it.
Well, I started this book in summer of 2024. And actually that was when all of the uptick of bird flu was first starting to come out, and they were trying to get us all hysterical about that again, like they did about the COVID. And I had written a book in 2005 about bird flu when the first bird flu pandemic was around in 2004 and 2005. And I'd written a book called Fowl, spelled Fowl, Fowl, Bird Flu, It's Not What You Think, because it was really about the environment. It was really an environmental book. And a couple of my staff members had read it and they said, man, this is really good. You need to just like change the cover and re-release it. And I said, no, it doesn't really work that way. Because first of all, it was written in 2005 and there was a lot of 2005 politics in there because that was Bush 2 and, all this other stuff that was going on with Cheney and Tamiflu and just a lot of stuff that was happening in politics from 20 years ago. I said, I can't just like re-release it. And so they said, well, you have to rewrite it then. And I said, well, you understand that books take on a life of their own. This is the fourth book I've written, and it takes on a life of its own when you write a book, and I'm not going to be able to do anything else except this for the next few months, if that's what you want me to do. Yes, we want you to do this. So as I dug in and I started looking at the material from 2005, I realized that there was a lot bigger story to be told here about the history from 2005 and all the things that happened through 2009 and the swine flu, in 2009, the swine flu thing that came out and all the vaccine stuff that happened and all of the changes in politics and all the changes in the environment. And then all the things that happened during COVID. And so I just rewrote a brand new book from scratch. Wow. And it turned out it's 416 pages. It turned out to be a lot bigger, and because there's so much in there. There's stuff about why they started using adjuvants and flu shots. There was a ton of stuff in there about the adjuvants themselves. I talked a lot about the connection between bird flu in 2005 and bird flu in 2024. I talked about the COVID and the COVID shots and what happened with that. Yeah. I talked about how they've used the same template over and over and over again. And it's a marketing template that they perfected and they want to use over and over again. Then I dig into a lot of things about the PrEP Act that people don't generally talk about with the PrEP Act, and also the Healthy People program that started in 1980 and each year in the 10 years, and how they've ramped it up and how it's become, how it has absolutely weaponized our healthcare system. And so there's a whole chapter in there called The Weaponization of the Healthcare System and the International Vaccine Programs. And people don't really talk about how Healthy People it started in 1980 when the Surgeon General wrote a plan for the U.S. for a healthier United States. And the only thing that he was really talking about was increasing seat belts and wearing helmets for motorcycles and smoking cessation. And that was just about it. I think there were six different things they were going to target. Because remember, in the 1980s, we didn't have computers and we didn't have mass communication, things like we have now. That was a 10-year goal from 1980 to 1990. And every single year, it's gotten more invasive, more sinister, more digging into our lives and leading us to this total surveillance and control system. And I talk about how that whole went on, the march from 1980 to 2030, and how that all happened and where we are and how we've gotten to here. And all those people that were damaged and injured by the COVID vaccines, how they are completely thrown underneath the bus because 1.6 million people filed VAERS reports, and they filed it with the wrong agency. And I talk about in the book the fact that if you went to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles to buy a plane ticket, they both have to do with transportation, but the DMV is not the place to buy a plane ticket. You couldn't buy a plane ticket there. Well, you can't get compensation for your injuries from COVID by filing a report with VAERS.
Wow.
It's the wrong agency. And the timeline was only a year. And the countermeasure injury compensation program is not funded. There's no tables. They're past the statute of limitations on all of them. And all of that was designed in 2005.
Wow.
They've used this as a template to roll forward to what they released on us and have not allowed to happen in 2020 to 2025 during the COVID vaccine. And I kind of tie it all together. And the last chapter is called The Activist Playbook, What You Can Do. And so after I lay out all this really dastardly stuff that has happened to America and the American healthcare system for the last 20 years, I write a whole chapter kind of tying it together and giving people some options on activism and things that they can do to not let this happen again. It's like, fool me once, shame on me. Yeah. Fool me twice, it ain't gonna happen. And here's what you can do to stop it from not happening again. So it's the title of the book is Zero Accountability in a Broken System: How Big Pharma Weaponized Vaccines, Public Health, and the Law.
Wow. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing book. I mean, it's been 5 years, but how is it that there's still people that believe the COVID vaccine saved lives?
I have no idea. And they just passed a law. I believe it was Montana, where they are going to outlaw. It was either Idaho or Montana, where they were going to outlaw mRNA vaccines. And I hope that extends to the saRNA vaccines, the self-amplifying RNA vaccines, which are even worse, more deadly, and more sinister than just the messenger RNA vaccines were from Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, and AstraZeneca. These self-amplifying RNA vaccines they go on forever, and they create proteins in our body that we don't even know what they are, and there's nothing that shuts them off. And so it's in how we can still give mRNA shots to pregnant women and babies as young as 3 months of age. All of those people it's criminal. And they set it up in Europe. And actually in Europe, they passed a bill in the spring of 2025 of this year that doctors and nurses could be held liable for giving shots because they have the opportunity to read and choose differently, and they didn't. And so they could be held liable. And I hope that shows up here in the United States.
Where is this at?
In Europe, was in the EU.
Wow. That's great. I mean, how is it that they were able to get the COVID shot in the childhood schedule? Isn't it still under the experimental, like it hasn't been fully approved?
Exactly.
So how is it that they were able to push it in the childhood schedule? And how is it still under the experimental classification if it works so well? How is it that they haven't converted it out?
Who's going to stop them? How did they get it in? Because who's going to stop them? They just do whatever they want. I mean, the whole agenda is to poison children. That's why I don't call it the pediatric vaccination schedule anymore. Yeah. It's the pediatric poisoning schedule.
Yeah.
And this poisoning now begins in the womb, where pregnant women get 4 or 5 shots by the time when they're still pregnant. And I say it's 4 shots that everybody gets. The fifth one, if you are an Rh negative person and you get a RhoGAM. So the fifth one is sort of optional depending on if you're Rh negative or Rh positive. But during pregnancy, you get a flu shot, a pneumonia shot, an RSV shot, and a COVID shot. And I'm old enough to remember, maybe you are too, that back in the days, they would tell pregnant women to not even take a Tylenol or an
Yeah. I
aspirin.
don't eat tuna.
Don't eat tuna.
Don't
Don't
eat
have a glass of
sushi.
wine. Yeah, don't have sushi. Don't have a glass of wine. Don't do any of those things. And now we are injecting them with poisons that gets transmitted to the fetus past the placenta and already starts the destruction of their immune system and their central nervous system before they are even born. And then as soon as they are born, they get slapped with a synthetic vitamin K shot, a hepatitis B, and now an RSV vaccine within hours of birth. So now they before they are even really barely breathing their first breaths, they've been injected with 7 poisons.
And the fact that there are so many moms out there, I didn't vaccinate our girls just because God told me not to. It's that was that gut feeling, that instinct that I had that I couldn't ignore. That's why I never vaccinated even myself while I was pregnant. It was like, it's just, there's something about this that's not right, right? How is it that so many moms, and we are so instinctual, we are so connected, we are so just that desire to protect our baby is so strong that how is it that so many moms are fooled? Is it that they're living in fear? Is it the fear porn that's being instilled in their mind that blocks them from being able to critically think? What do you think it is?
I think it's 2 things. One thing, I think it's a multi-generational, 200-year indoctrination into safe and effective, necessary, and I have to trust my doctor. I think that's the one thing.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is the fear porn that they don't spend. It's amazing to me how a mother or a father, a parent in general, your most important, most valuable, most incredible thing in your life is your children.
Yeah.
And how you wouldn't spend a little bit of time investigating what's coming through that needle. I've said this on a lot of programs. I said, when you get pregnant, God gives you 2 gifts. Mm-hmm. Number one, the first gift is that you were able to conceive and you're going to become a parent. The second gift is he's given you 9 months to know the assaults that's going to be on your child from food, from environment, from vaccines, from education, from all sorts of things. You've got a gift of a window of time to do more than just shop for the right colors for the nursery.
Exactly. Exactly. And fortunately, there's so much information out there where even though people are being censored and banned, you can find it. It's there. I remember when I first started researching 10 years ago, I really couldn't find it. I would look and I would search and I found everything safe and effective. And again, at that point, I was just like, I'm not going to do it. Something happened where, a mommy that I was going to mommy and me classes with, her baby got the MMR at 6 months and then immediately started having seizures. So that was kind of like my sign from God, you see, don't do it, And so, I really hope and pray that more moms open their minds and realize that God didn't make a mistake. We were born perfect. And God didn't say, oh my God, I messed up, so pharma needs to come in and inject my children. No, he didn't make any mistakes.
That's another one of those myths that need to go away. We have been told by the pediatricians that babies are born incomplete and they're born without an immune system, which is a lie. It's a flat out lie. Every single human was born with what's called an innate immune system, INNATE, innate immune system, which means the natural functioning immune system that you're born with. And we have it from the moment we are born until the moment we die. And that's all of the internal, the toll-like receptors, the macrophages, the lymphocytes, the ability to create a fever, which is with cytokines. That's all naturally inborn in us.
Yeah.
What we don't have is what's called the adaptive immunity, which is why when babies are born and they're constantly putting everything in their mouth because they're adapting to their universe. They're the things the creams and the lotions that you put on them, the breast milk, the things that come through your breast milk when you feed them, that's called the adaptive immunity. And when you inject foreign matter, the only reason, the definition of effective really is, when you look it up in the Webster Dictionary, the definition of effective is it does what it's intended to do. So when you inject a vaccine into a baby, what is intended to do is the development of an antibody. So if it creates an antibody, then it's effective.
Yeah.
Effective is not a synonym for protection. Just because you have an antibody doesn't mean it keeps you from getting sick. And they've known that from the beginning.
Yeah.
So what's missing from your baby is the adaptive immune system that they feel like they have to force by injecting these poisons to create an antibody that your baby doesn't even need.
Exactly.
Your baby doesn't need antibodies to hepatitis B and tetanus and pertussis and all of these things from the moment it's born, from up to 2 months of age. I mean, anybody that's listening to this, I'm sure at some point in time, you've picked up and held in your arms a 2-month-old baby. It's this tiny little thing that's barely born. It can't lift up its head. It's just barely born. And we're going to be injecting foreign matter and poisons into these babies to somehow keep it healthy.
Yeah.
I think that you need to everybody listening to this needs to rethink that.
Yeah, and foreign matter that has been designed to go through the blood-brain barrier. Designed. That's the design. You want to be putting a substance in your baby's body that is going through that protective shield that God created because man thinks that they're smarter than God.
Very good.
It's insane. So you obviously have, alternative medical center that people come to you with. I'm sure you're seeing a crazy amount of COVID injured patients. What are the things that you're doing at your center to help people detox from these vaccines? What advice can you give people who took the shot and are maybe at home suffering, or maybe gave it to their child and they're at home suffering with their child and they can't afford to do what I did for my nephew, which I spent $100,000 reversing his autism? What advice do you have for people that can't afford to go to your center? I have a wellness center as well. But is there little things that they can do at home, or there's certain supplements that you might recommend? Could we talk about that for a minute?
Well, that's a whole big gamut of, it's like 5 questions you just asked me all in one there.
Just pick your favorite one.
What people can do at home is they just need to get overall healthy, which means you change your diet, take out white sugar, white flour, refined white sugar, refined white flour, homogenized milk, seed oils. Eat as much organic as you can find and you can afford. Don't eat anything out of a can or box where they hand you out the window. The main thing is using food as your medicine and drinking plenty of water, getting moving a little bit, getting at least 20 minutes a day of exercise, and getting the right amount of sleep for you. And I always qualify that because we always say, oh, you need to get 8 hours of sleep. Well, that's kind of like saying you need to breathe so many times a day. I mean, it's different from person to person. Some people can feel well and do well on 5 hours of sleep, and some people need 10. And so to say 8 is not, it's just a ballpark. And so I always tell people, find out what amount of sleep, when you have to play around with this a little bit. When you get up in the morning that you feel like you're rested and you're restored, and do the math and say, well, I went to bed at midnight, I got up at 7 and I feel really good. Okay, so you need 7 hours of sleep. And you do that with consistency. And you move at least 20 minutes a day. Like really if you like to exercise and you can do more, that's even better. Drink whatever you weigh. If you weigh 150 pounds, try to drink 70 ounces of water a day, half your body weight in ounces. Take Detoxing is just a continual thing that you always need to do, irrespective of vaccines or vaccine injury, because we live in a toxic soup world with the food that we eat, with the air that we breathe, the water that we consume, the lotions we put on, the shampoos, every single thing that we do is we live in a toxic world. And if anybody thinks that they can get away from it, please tell me where you found the Garden of Eden, because I'd like to move in with you,
Yeah,
because there
me
is
too.
no such. And so it's just a continual thing. We use a lot of Touchstone's products, Touchstone Essentials. We use the zeolite spray that we like a lot for detoxing. We use their fulvic minerals. I love their product called Boost. Instead, because it just gives you a little pick me up in the middle of the afternoon instead of having to drink any more coffee. I like their product. It's called Gluco Control because it balances out your blood sugar. And I take it in the evening because it takes away those munchies that you sometimes get in the evening. There's all kinds of things that you can do to detox. We do IV therapies in the office. I mean, you can do hyperbaric that helps you to detox. You can do, there's just all kinds of things that you can do. Red light therapies, saunas, all of those things are helpful because it's not something you can do once and then you're done with it. I mean, the parasite cleanses. Touchstone has a really great product that I love. It's their new thing. It's called Parashield.
Okay.
That you take one dropper full twice a day for 3 weeks on, 1 week off. And I've noticed such a big difference in how I feel since I've been taking that. And and because we're always exposed to parasites
Yeah.
through the food that we eat. If we've got animals, if you've got dogs,
That's
cats, whatever,
Dr.
it's
Hulda
all
Clark.
around. Yeah, and that's been around since
She's the
the
mother.
70s?
Yeah, she's the mother of parasite cleanses.
Yeah. And it's not something you do once. It's something that you have to do ongoing because we have so totally and thoroughly contaminated God's worlds with metals and microplastics and EMFs and all sorts of things. And so it's something you have to keep going and doing, irrespective of whether or not you've had a COVID jab. Because I personally don't think you can detox the COVID jab out of your system. And I'm not the only one who says that. There's a lot of people who say the same thing. So the idea is to get your body healthy. And as you get your body healthier, let your body deal with the injections that went into your system, whether that injection is an MMR or a COVID shot or a flu shot or a shingle shot or whatever. You need to get your body healthy because the body is a self-healing, self-amplifying machine.
Yeah.
That's an osteopathic principle.
Yeah.
And it can clean itself if it's given the right foods and the right thing. If it's put the right stuff in, it'll get the wrong stuff out.
If you think about it, our bodies are incredible miracles. The fact that it can withstand what you described earlier of the vaccine poison program, the fact that it can withstand a beautiful fresh baby in the mother's womb of these 4 shots, and then the minute that baby's born, more shots, and then for the next 5 years, way more. The fact that these kids are even surviving this shows how powerful these bodies are and how God's creation is just incredible. Otherwise, how is it that we're even still alive, and how humanity hasn't been dissolved into nothing because it's a constant attack, as you said. So when you do hit that tipping point and you just crash, there is a way to bring it back to life. But you said nutrients, food, detoxing, doing everything to get your body back into a balanced place where it still can handle the toxic soup that you can't completely get rid of, even if it's the COVID shot, but you're now at least a little bit more balanced. Is that right?
Well, yeah, but all of this stuff we're doing is catching up with us.
Yeah.
Adult life expectancy is down, and they've said if you've had 2 or more COVID shots, life expectancy may have been decreased by 15 years. We're looking at now the new autism rates that have just come out. When I started doing this, autism was about 1 in 1,200. Now then it went to like 1 in 500, then 1 in 150. Now it's 1 in 31. And it's 1 in
Heartbreaking.
20 boys. And in the state of California, it's 1 in 12 kids. What we are doing with pummeling these kids with these poisons. That's why I said it's a we've got to spread that word and make it be everybody knows it, that it's a when you go to the pediatrician, it's time for my kids to get vaccines. No, it's time for you to poison your children. It's a pediatric poisoning schedule. And I think that hits people in the face like a cold glass of water. Like
Yeah,
what?
the
And it
pediatric
makes them,
poisoning.
wait a minute.
We should make a
Maybe if you
shirt.
just think about that just a little bit, that maybe we can get it to stop. It has to stop, or we are not going to have humanity left. We're really not.
No.
And these turbo cancers that are taken off now, that are these turbo cancers that are happening in children, children as young as 8 years old are having metastatic colon cancer. We're seeing breast cancer in 12-year-olds.
Ugh.
We're seeing ovarian cancer in 10-year-olds. These are, adult type diseases that you usually didn't see colon, breast, prostate cancers until much older. And you would see blood cancers like leukemias and things like that in young kids. Well, now we're seeing these older cancers, and we'll see people, and these turbo cancers are just so aggressive. It's like you could be normal on Monday, be diagnosed on Friday, and be dead the following Friday
And the
because they are so incredibly aggressive. When you ask about what are we seeing in my clinic here at Tenpenny Integrative Medical Center here in Cleveland, my doctors and the people that are there, Dr. Clapper told me a couple weeks ago that about a third of the new patients that she's seeing are cancer patients, which we have never seen before because we really don't treat cancer in our clinic. We never have for lots of different reasons. But she said it's nonstop.
oh my God.
And I know that Dr. Mackus out of Canada said that he's getting about 600 people a week contacting him for help. And I know other oncologists are just overwhelmed because of all the cancer that's been caused by these COVID jabs, highly aggressive and highly fatal. And so, all of these things, you make a statement that, and I agree with you, that our bodies are self-repairing, self-recovering machines. But are we reaching a tipping point of what we have allowed the government and the pharmaceutical agents to do to us
Yeah.
that are just wiping out humanity,
It's
just
heartbreaking.
wiping it out?
It's just heartbreaking. We have a wellness center as well. I opened one, a little over a year ago. And when you talk about cancers and somebody who has cancer and then they go to the hospital, and again, it's one of the things that they talk about in this book. The root cause of all diseases is pollution, pollutants, and toxins. And then they hammer these people with cancer with radiation and chemotherapy. It's like they're already toxic soup. Here, let me just dump them more into a toxic puddle and think somehow that's going to heal them. So we have a beautiful young girl, 36 years old, and literally she had cervical cancer. They doused her with 4 rounds of radiation. Boom, boom, boom. The final one was chemo. The doctor said, listen, she can't handle anymore. I'm going to call hospice. I'm going to send you home. 2 weeks. She'll probably won't be here anymore. So just try and keep it as painless as possible. We're going to pump her up with all sorts of medical drugs and painkillers. But, you might as well give your hugs and say goodbye to your child. The 36-year-old. And she found her way to our place through someone, a beautiful soul, who was like, can you do anything? And literally what you just said is what we've been doing. The thought was, let's get some nutrients in her. Let's help slowly pull these chemicals out of her body. And she went from being completely wheelchair bound, not even able to use the bathroom on her own because the radiation literally fried her insides, constant bleeding because of what they did to her, to 45 days later she's on her own walking and she gained 20 pounds. She was 70 pounds and now she's 90. So it's like, it seems backwards to me that how the root cause of cancer is toxins, and yet traditional medical world will shower a person with more toxins and basically kill everything good and bad in sight, make the person worse, and then send them home to die. Make that make sense.
Well, of course, you can't make that make sense.
You know?
You know,
So what are some of the things that you're doing in your place for people who are having massive side effects from COVID, or they got cancer? Like what are some of the things that you're seeing as working the best in your
well, we're
integrative
doing
practice?
something called UBI, which is it's a blue, it's light radiated blood. We pull out their blood and we put it into an IV bag and run it through a machine that does inserts blue light into the blood, and then it goes back and heals the body. We've been doing ECP therapy. And so ECP therapy improves circulation, improves all the cardiovascular stuff that came along with damage from that. And long before COVID, cancer and cardiovascular disease were still the number one and number two killer in America. So we're using ECP therapy to improve their cardiovascular and to improve their mental status and things too. We do a lot of hormone balancing, a lot of nutritional balancing. We do a lot of pretty fancy blood tests to determine just exactly what is missing and then replacing that rather than just doing a shotgun approach. So
Do you have any oh, I lost you. Are you there?
yeah.
Oh, do you have any miraculous stories that you want to share with us of somebody who was just badly injured, I don't know, wheelchair bound, that you were able to help basically
Well,
support
honestly,
the
I
body?
haven't seen patients. I haven't seen patients myself since August of 23. So when I had a stroke. And so I have not seen patients in that length of time. And so I don't have any firsthand experience with exposure of things like that. And so I can't answer that question for you.
And how are you doing? And what do you think caused the stroke? And how did you help yourself heal? Because you
I don't have
obviously you
any
look
idea what
great.
caused it. I don't have any idea what caused it.
You don't think shedding
I
was a
don't.
shedding, or
Maybe.
you don't know?
That's the stroke symptoms started when I got off of an airplane.
Oh
So
wow.
maybe. And so I was on my way to Las Vegas to speak at a meeting. Excuse me a second
Okay,
here.
sure.
And I got off an airplane. I was super dizzy, and then I had a lot of weakness in my left leg. And then I got better, and I flew home and mowed the yard and did the laundry, and 2 days later I couldn't move my left side. And so
Wow.
I mean, completely could not do anything on my left side. And two of my really good friends who are naturopaths dropped everything and came and spent 2 weeks with me, taking care of me. And I went and I did ECP therapy twice a day for 2 weeks because of the known published literature about ECP, how it helps strokes and particularly early on strokes. And so and I was just determined. I said, this is just nonsense. This isn't going to be my life.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this back. And so I did some pretty heavy duty therapy. I went to a neuro rehab center in Provo, Utah called Cognitive FX. That was the end of January, first part of February. And I've just been in some pretty aggressive therapy programs that I've just done on my own at home. I just found muscles that didn't work, and I just worked on them until they worked again. I mean, like one day I was sitting out on my patio, and I had there's a big table out there, and I was listening to music, and I was tapping my right foot. And I thought, I wonder if I could do that with my left foot, and I couldn't.
Wow.
And I sat there all day working with my left foot and my left leg until I could tap my foot with my heel because I
Wow.
wasn't going to get up. It was like 7 hours. I just kept at it on and again because I knew from the neuroplasticity of the brain that I could either wake up damaged neurons or I could reset things and create new pathways.
Wow.
And that was what was going to happen. I mean,
Wow.
at the time, I didn't have any strength in my hand, not even enough strength to push down one key to put control, alt, paste, cut and paste, or anything like that. And I said, this is not going to happen. I'm going to keep doing this. And I did finger exercises. I got one of them gripper things. I just was nonstop.
Wow.
And that's kind of my message to people is that don't be satisfied with where you are physically if you've had a stroke. Just don't do it. When I went to that neuro rehab unit out in Provo, Utah, I said, I was told by people that, you have to work really hard for the first 2 years because where you are at the end of 2 years is where you're going to be. And I was told by everybody there, they said that that's nonsense, that that's old school thinking,
Wow.
old school medicine, old school rehab, that they see people that 7 years out from a stroke, they go out there and they don't get all better, but they get improvement. And as long as you're continuing to work, you always see improvement.
Wow.
My doctor early on, I was about 4 months into this, and I was driving. I forced myself to learn how to drive again. I told my physical therapist, there's two things I need to learn how to do. Number one is I have to be able to get up and down the steps. And number two, because my studio's down here in my basement. And the second thing is I have to learn how to drive again because I can't have somebody carting me around all the time.
Wow.
And so I just forced myself to learn how to do all the things I did, everything cognitively that I could think of to do, all the reflex stuff that I learned how to do, because this was like just a big inconvenience. And I wasn't going to live with this inconvenience. And my doctor told me about 4 months into this, Dr. Clapper, she says, do you realize how far ahead of the curve you are?
Wow.
I said, no, I'm just mad that I still have these issues. And she said, let me tell you what stroke patients usually happen. They usually, they have a stroke, they go to the hospital, which I didn't do. I treated myself at home.
Wow.
And they go to a rehab center and they do physical therapy until their insurance capacity stays out. And then they're like, well, this is where I'm going to be.
Wow.
This is just my life. And I said, why would you do that? Why would you give up and not learn how to? I mean, when this first started, I couldn't even put my underwear on.
Wow.
I mean, I couldn't comb my hair. I couldn't do anything. And I'm just like, I live alone. My husband died 11 years ago, and I live alone with my dog, and I don't have kids. And so I got to take care of me.
Wow.
And so I am going to do this, and I'm going to get everything back. And now, it's not in August, it'll be 2 years. And I still have a little bit of residual weakness in my left leg that I'm still working on every day. And I have some cardiovascular reserve stuff that I still have to work on. So I do all kinds of exercises for that. And I'm beginning to understand now, almost 2 years into this, why they say at the end of 2 years, where you are is where you're going to be. Because at the end of 2 years, you're just sick of working on it.
Wow.
You're just sick of it. It's like it's not like you had appendicitis and it heals up and goes away. It's not like you broke your arm and your arm's all healed now. I mean, you've had a brain injury and you have to continually, and I'm not 20 years old anymore. And so you constantly have to keep doing things. And I'm beginning to understand that I think that where this 2 year limit came from is that people just get sick of it. They're
Right.
just like, okay, I'm done. I've done as much as I'm going to do. And they don't realize it's a life process that you have to keep doing on and on and on. And I tell everybody this, Leila, when I say, I did all the physical work and I did a lot of it and I'm still doing it, but God did all the heavy lifting. And I know that I had thousands of people that are out there praying for me to get better and get well and be happy and sent me things. And so I know it was the Holy Spirit that really has given me the drive and has also done a lot of the healing in my body. That is I still got stuff that I have to deal with. And then I think about Paul, ask to please have the thorn removed. And the Lord said, my grace is sufficient. So I keep thinking, I haven't gotten to that point yet where I'm ready to give up and say, this is it. This is all I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But I really want my message to anybody who's listening to this today or in the future. Um, don't give up.
Yeah.
If you've had any sort of an illness, if you've had any type of injury, if you've had a surgical repair, if you've had a stroke, and there's a ton of strokes out there because of this COVID stuff now. I see these people at the airport. It's like unbelievable. I've been a big traveler my whole life, and I've never seen as many stroke patients. I mean, I was getting on an American airline plane. This was maybe 6 months ago, and I counted them. There were 14 wheelchairs getting on before
Wow.
me, and I've never seen anything like that before. And it's just everywhere, and it's just all this stuff from these COVID jabs. And I'm just telling people, don't give up.
Yeah.
the plasticity of your brain, you can keep working and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and you can always make little gains. There's still things that I find even now that I go, wow, that little muscle group isn't working right. We need to work on that.
Mm-hmm.
So do your own self-assessment. You don't need to be a doctor. Just take your good side and do this and find out if your left side can do it. And if it can't, start working on it.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with your toes, your feet, your ankle, your knees. You just compare sides. And if it's not working right on your affected side, just start working on it. Just start trying to mirror it and do the same thing on your good side as you're doing on your damaged side. And you'll be amazed at how much better it gets.
Well, you definitely look great, and you are,
Thank you.
as always, as smart as ever. And like for me, if I didn't know, I wouldn't know, speaking to you, that something like this happened to you 2 years ago. And I think it's a good message to give people that you have to be determined and you have to empower yourself to do what it takes. Nobody's going to just like, give you this pill to take and all of a sudden everything has been reversed. You have to do
Exactly.
the work.
Exactly.
And that's probably how so many people fell into the COVID trap, because you had all these people that were walking around sick, sickly, overweight, this and that, and they thought they could take this magic shot and that was going to prevent them from getting COVID. It's like, no, you know what, your vitamin D's are in the trash. You eat like crap, you're constantly stuffing your face with seed oils. Maybe why don't you focus on your health and your well-being, so if you do get sick, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. But I love that message that you're giving people, because people need to be empowered. They need to know that having a situation like a stroke, or like my husband at 41 had a heart attack, and he is in the best shape of his life at almost 60 years old, because he did something about it. He made significant changes. He didn't sit back and say, oh, I'm going to be a victim, or my dad died of this, so it's just going to happen to me and I'm not going to make any life changes. So it's just it's you're doing good work, and I love that you're continuing the fight, and I love that your integrative clinic is helping so many people out there who need the help. I just wish there were, I feel like now that Bobby Kennedy's where he's at, I'm hopeful that more doctors will open their eyes to maybe looking a little bit deeper into alternative medicine, maybe looking more deeply into the light therapy or the ozone therapy, or the different therapies that are actually going to help clean and detox your blood to get these pollutants out. So that way you can give your body that little nudge that it needs to get back into this balanced place. But like, as you said earlier, I feel like you just hit the nail on the head, is that we live in toxic soup. We can't avoid it. So do something about it, and start now. Don't wait till you get sick.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly right. And it's there's I think that the Maha movement is they're really onto something in terms of our food supply. I mean, it's if you really pay attention when you go to the grocery store, it's disgusting what they call food. It's disgusting. I mean, even the organic produce is suspect, what they call it, because even if they haven't sprayed chemicals on it, the soil has chemicals in it that grows up in it. And so when you walk down the aisle and you pick up anything in a can or a box or a bar or salad dressing or anything, and you read the label and it says made with bioengineered ingredients, I looked at the other day, I just did this for an exercise for myself when I went to the grocery store, and I just went and I was picking up and it said made with bioengineered sugar. I mean, they're even bioengineering, genetically modifying, and bioengineered is different than genetically modified.
It's
And they're
worse.
two different things, and they're both bad. And so but you look at all the soybean oils and it's just in everything. I mean, there isn't anything that you can buy that's in a can, a box, or a bag, or a wrap that doesn't have that junk in it.
Yeah.
There just isn't. And it is really discouraging.
Yeah.
It's because it's like, you kind of walk down you're kind of looking around. It's like, well, what can I eat?
Yeah.
If you get if you get produce, even if you get organic produce, honestly, let's be honest, after a while, you get a little sick of it. I mean, if the only thing I can eat is a salad I just get really sick of it. And so it gets boring. And so, and then I just did an interview on my podcast the other day with a gal that was talking about the bad things that are inside of the meat industry, and how they inhumanely do butcher cows alive and strangle pigs because they're too fat. And I mean, the stuff that she was telling me, that she's been doing this investigative research for 40 years, was just repulsive. And it's like, really what we have done to God's planet in terms of the chemicals in the soil and the water, and what we've done to fish. I mean, there are over 50 vaccines for fish now. 50, so fish and the plants and fertilizer. I think it was Mike Adams that did an expose on, what is in a bag of fertilizer that you buy at Home Depot, and it's full of lead and mercury and human excrement and all these different things. It's like, it's just disgusting what we have done to God's planet and the food that we eat, and what we've done to human beings as we're headed towards this transhumanism stuff, and one world order, and one world government, one world religion, all of these different things that was been predicted, and here we are.
I don't know if you know this, but we bought an 800-acre ranch in Oklahoma, and we have a 30-acre farm here in Florida, but it's because of exactly what you're saying. You were literally in the process of building a meat processing plant on our ranch to be able to have our own chicken that we're able to kill humanely, make sure the chicken is fed the right food, make sure they're able to free roam. Like, all of these things are absolutely incredible. And so we're like, we can't trust. You go to some of these places, Whole Foods, and everything's organic, yet they're buying all their stuff from China that has no regulations.
Yeah.
So I've sent food out, organic meat. I've sent it to the lab to get it tested, and I've seen it come back with lead. I've seen, if you go to the store and you eat regular chicken and you test it, which I've done, and it comes back full of glyphosate. So it was so much for me to deal with. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to build our own, because like you said, you can have organic, but what's in the soil? So we found soil that hadn't been touched at all, hadn't been farmed at all, and we're doing regenerative farming. And what I think is fascinating is, like, when we get our avocados or our carrots, they all look deformed, right? How is it that an organic carrot or an organic avocado or organic apple is so perfect? That's not how they grow naturally. So how are they able to label it organic when there's no way that a perfect apple is organic? I haven't been able to understand that, because now that I have a farm, I'm like, how come our carrots look so deformed, but the grocery store is perfect? And we use 0 chemicals, nothing. You literally pull it out of there, the grass, you wash it off, and you eat it.
Very good. That's wonderful.
But, if you're ever in Miami, I would love to take you around, show us what we have here, show you our farm, show you our wellness center, and just, invite you to have a nice VIP day at our center if you're, ever in town and you want to relax a little bit.
Well, thank you so much. I may just take you up on that in the not too distant future. That would be wonderful, Leila.
Anytime. And I have a brand new brain machine that's called the ExoMind. It's like TMS on steroids. All you need is 6 treatments. And it's just supposed to do wonders for the brain. There's a lot of white papers and stuff on it. So I just got it, and I'm super excited about using it. Very cool. All right, Dr. Tenpenny, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And again, you look amazing as ever. Thank you for just sharing the knowledge and everything that you do. And thank you for just continuing that fight.